We're joined now by Sean Callahan of HuskerOnline. Nebraska 17-9 winner against Northwestern on Saturday. Nebraska now 4-3. And Sean, we're doing best case and worst case scenarios. And I was listening to Will Compton do an interview last week, and proud Cornhusker, and he was spinning out a scenario where Nebraska wins the Big Ten West. And I was like, come on. But after what we saw yesterday, which was not pretty, but it was a win, and Iowa losing, I can kind of see the path.
Yeah, you look at this West division right now. Not one offense yesterday put up 400 yards of offense. I think Wisconsin was the high water mark, just under 400. Iowa almost won with 127 yards of offense yesterday. So
2 yards in the second half. 2.
I mean, you look at the West, it's a lot of teams with new coaches and I think 5 teams that have had quarterback injuries or quarterback changes. So it's just a disaster on offense. A lot of just transitional teams right now. And Nebraska is so limited right now, but give Matt Rhule credit. He's embraced what this team is. They've got a very good defense. They've got pretty good special teams, and they've got an offense that's lost 4 of its top 5 receivers and 2 of its top 3 running backs. And they have a change at quarterback right now. I mean, and they're featuring a tight end that's had 2 major knee injuries, Thomas Fidone. So it's about as limited of a unit as I've seen in my time covering Nebraska. And, there's been some teams over the last 20 plus years that have struggled, but nothing like this in terms of what they have available.
It's crazy because it clearly was not Rhule's intent to play the same style as everybody else in the West. It's just worked out that way because their defense is very good and has stayed relatively healthy compared to the offense.
Yeah, I think if this team would have been at full strength, you would make a case right now they would win this West division if they had their full team. I mean, they had as good of receivers as anybody in the division, and they had great running back depth. But Rhule, I think, and he said this when he came here. He's like, look, when I went to Baylor, I adapted to the Big 12. When I was at Temple, I adapted to that league, and he's not one of those coaches. He's not 2004 Bill Callahan trying to force the West Coast offense to Nebraska with Joe Daly at quarterback. He's really embraced kind of what they are. And Heinrich Haarberg's going to have to carry a big load. As a quarterback, he's going to have to carry it 15 plus times a game. That's probably not where he wants to be as an offense, but he's one of their best weapons right now. And losing Billy Kemp yesterday, Andy, that was humongous because he was their veteran number 1 receiver. We don't know how long he's out for. It sounds like it's not a end of the season type deal, but how many weeks will that potential MCL knee injury, what Rhule called after the game, keep him out for?
Yeah, and that's the thing is they're going to have to stitch this all together. But you look at the schedule; they can beat Purdue. Now they can lose any of these games too. So let's remember that. But they can beat Purdue. The Michigan State Maryland thing, those teams from the East. They've probably, if they want to win the West, they've probably got to win both of those. But interestingly enough, it's funny because we're talking pie in the sky here, winning the West. If they beat Purdue and they split Michigan State and Maryland, they're bowl eligible. How long has Nebraska been waiting for that?
Yeah, you think about 2016, they went to Nashville. That was their last bowl trip. And I'll tell you what, I think a lot of Husker fans would kill for a trip to Nashville or Vegas for a bowl game right now, just after what – you think about the Scott Frost era. That was the home run of coaching hires. Like, this cannot fail. They never went to a bowl game once under Scott Frost. They could have gone in 2020. The players actually voted not to go to the bowl in 2020 after Scott Frost lobbied to play football in 2020 and took a lot of heat for it at that time. A bowl game of any kind, if it's in Detroit or if it's in Vegas or Nashville or New York, wherever. I think Rutgers, by the way, would be a lock at this point. Going to the Pinstripe Bowl, getting their 6th win, that just makes too much sense. But I think anyone here would just crave, and they need these practices, Andy. They haven't had those 15 bowl practices since that 2016 season.
Well, and okay, we'll do the worst case scenario. I know nobody wants to hear that. They can lose any of these games on their schedule because they're so limited on offense. How do they keep that part from happening? Like, because we want to, you want to be your best. But if they can just hit in the middle, like we just said, get to 6 wins, how do they make sure they get to 6 wins?
They got to run the ball effectively, close to 200 yards in a game, and they can do that. By the way, Northwestern only blitzed twice yesterday, so teams are not blitzing Nebraska anymore. They know Harburg is effective as a runner, so they're not going to let him have those long QB scramble runs because they're blitzing him, because he can outrun your blitz. He's that fast. So the running game is going to be challenging. Also, Ethan Piper, one of their top offensive linemen, went out yesterday, possibly for the season.
Same play as Billy Kemp, right?
Yeah, it was a 2-for-1 deal. Two of their top veteran guys went out on one play. Their center, Ben Scott, went out for 3 plays, came back in the game. So, that offensive line's a big part of it. They played okay, but I just don't know how they're going to draw it up at receiver. They're going to play 3 true freshmen and a walk-on from Omaha who was just put on scholarship, and Alex Bullock. He's their number 1 right now.
Wow. But they're doing it. They're winning. This is a winning streak. The old people will remember from Major League, Lou Brown explaining what that means to people. And at Nebraska, they haven't had many of those lately. It feels like Matt Rhule is starting to get the buy-in he wants, the temperament he wants, even if they don't have the personnel that they need right now.
Yeah, you can sense the belief, the buy-in to Matt Rhule with his team, and you saw it in the locker room. I don't know if you saw the video, Andy. They did he did like a crowd surf, jumped on the team, and they lifted him in the air. And these guys love Coach Rhule. I mean, he's demanding, but these players want that. They're tired of losing here. When you have 90,000 people show up to your games every week, and there's 50 media members at every availability, and you have to keep talking about not winning, it gets old. And these players want to win. They want to be pushed by a coach that knows how to push them and has a proven track record. And Matt Rhule has really done that. And I think there's a buy-in right now.
Yeah, and I go back to something. I talked to him in the spring, and he said he felt like Nebraska, it was more like year 2 at Baylor or year 2 at Temple. It wasn't as big of a teardown job as those jobs. And you thought, okay, are you sure about that? Especially with the way the season started. But I think he may be right. I think this could end on a very positive note, and then you build on that.
Well, there were a lot of recruiting classes that were on this roster that were 25-ish ranked type classes, quality players. They just weren't developed, and they just weren't coached right. They weren't played right. Matt Rhule has figured out a way to get more out of some of these guys that just weren't contributing. And it's on the defensive side of the ball. You're seeing a lot of these players like Ty Robinson. Nash Hutmacher, the nose tackle, is playing at an all Big Ten level, whether it's like a second or third team, but he had 2.5 sacks on the nose. I mean, they are getting a ton out of that defense, much more than anybody could have projected. And granted, it is the Big Ten West, so they're not seeing great offenses, but they made some big time plays in the game against Northwestern on Saturday. It's
going to be fun to watch, because if they get to 6 wins, that fan base is going to be deliriously happy. But if they can make a run, and this is my thing was with Iowa, if they were going to keep winning that way, and when he returned the punt, I thought, okay, well, that's it. They're just going to keep winning this way. But Minnesota showed you they can be beaten. That defense and special teams doesn't always come through necessarily. And Nebraska did beat them last year with an interim staff. Like, it feels like there's a chance. I don't want to get everybody too excited. And honestly, from a viewership standpoint, I don't know if I want to see Nebraska against Michigan or Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. But can you imagine what that would be like?
Yeah, I mean, if you're being honest, you're like, yeah, all right, if they got to 7-8 wins, played well, and didn't make it to Indy, that's probably the best case scenario.
Maybe the plane breaks down and be like, you just go ahead and go to the playoff. We'll see you there.
Just take it, go. Yeah, exactly. Because I don't know if anybody in the West, and it looked like Wisconsin, Wisconsin could still play itself back in this thing, but they don't have the quarterback play right now. And Braylon Allen's shoulder, how much can he take? He had a lot of carries yesterday, but it seems like he's battled a lot of bumps and bruises where they can only lean on him so much when, he looks like he's the best offensive player in the West, but they can only give him so many carries a game.
Yeah. And so Nebraska, the path is there. And it feels honestly like the worst case scenario is bowl eligibility, which I think people should feel pretty good about. Sean Callahan, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you very much, Andy. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, Subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.